Welcome to the first full episode of What It Was Like, my nostalgia show about what it was like growing up in the 1980s and 90s and actually experiencing a lot of this stuff firsthand, rather than in the remake generation. So, one of those things is I had the immense privilege of buying a Dreamcast on 9/9/99. That amazing day that many of us who are Dreamcast owners remember. I was an early adopter, and it was not only for me the first time I ever bought a system when it launched, it was the first system I ever bought with my own money. My parents didn't forbid us from gaming, but they just didn't think it was a big priority, and they just, didn't see why it mattered at all to buy the systems when they came out, especially when they drop in price later and you could just get them at garage sales for $10, and what's wrong with playing the old ones? So, let's just say my parents were not gamers and did not empathize with many of the things that were important to me about it. And so, all of this actually starts before the actual day I bought the Dreamcast at launch. I actually rented it at Hollywood Video a few months earlier, and it would be that experience of trying Sonic Adventure and actually having no memory card and having to leave the system on all weekend. But it got me convinced that I needed to buy a Dreamcast. This was going to be the future. I loved Sonic already. I'd been a Genesis kid, and I absolutely had to have this. And so that was the first summer that I just worked all summer. I developed a lot of the work ethic I have now because I realized that it's like, to get the things I want and control my own entertainment, I needed to have the money to buy the things I wanted. And so not only was I going in, I had the experience of always, never having enough controllers, enough controller extensions or memory cards or whatever stuff you needed. We were always on the cheap. And so walking in with I think I had $350, $400, and the Dreamcast was $200 with one controller, no memory card when it came out. So I had enough. It was I got two games. I got Sonic Adventure and Blue Stinger. I got two controllers, a memory card. I was loaded. And so for me, it was an absolutely amazing experience of not only that, which now we consider one of the legendary console launches. That was my first time ever walking into a game store on launch day and walking out with the new game and the new console, the new console seller game and the system for it. And so that's what this episode's about.
As I mentioned in the intro, our story actually begins a few months before that numerically beautiful day of 9/9/99, when I was making one of my regular trips to Hollywood Video, something we did back then, which, by the way, if you're a youngster viewing this as a historical document, Hollywood Video was the #1 competitor to Blockbuster, basically the same thing with a different sign. But one day when I went in there was something different, something magnificent. A Dreamcast kiosk, emblazoned on the side with the snappy slogan, "It's thinking," and playing the new Sonic game that wouldn't be out for months, that I'd only heard about and read about in magazines. Now, I was utterly dumbfounded at 14. I have to say, I must have stood there slack-jawed with drool just dripping down my face. But eventually, I waited in line, I got to play it, and I don't even think I noticed until I played it, or my brain couldn't accept it, that at the top of the kiosk was a sign that said "Rent Now." And I realized I could actually take this home and play it right now. And at the time, it was $35 to rent a system, and there was no special premium to rent the Dreamcast. It was just like renting a PlayStation or a Nintendo 64. And I think $35 was like my life savings at the time, but you better believe I convinced my mom to let me blow my life savings on renting a Dreamcast for a weekend. So, funny thing, the VMU was not available yet in the United States, so there was no memory unit along with this rental. There was no way that we could save our progress. So, when we fired up that copy of Sonic Adventure, we realized the first time that there was no internal memory, and every time we shut it off, we would be looking at this again. Now, being kids and clever kids, we came up with a really simple solution. We hooked the rental Dreamcast up to an extension cord, and every night or time we had to leave for the entire weekend we had it rented for, we would hide it in the closet. Now, somehow the Dreamcast survived this, and we didn't overheat it by putting too many pillows on top of it in the closet, and I don't think my parents caught us, so I played through, I believe, Sonic's campaign and most of Tails and Knuckles in that time we had it rented, and by the time this was over and this Dreamcast went back to Hollywood Video, I was convinced of one thing. I had to mow a crap load of lawns. and mow lawns I did, and do any other sort of yard work or things that people, neighbors, family members, anyone would pay me for. And by the time that summer was over and we were rolling around to September, I had the Dreamcast reserved. I had what was a huge wad of cash to me. It was between $350, $400. I can't remember exactly how much, but I walked in there and I seriously, I felt like a rap star. But I didn't look like a rap star, by the way. I, at this point, had put on some muscle, and mowing all those lawns had, caused me to grow a beard somehow. And no, seriously, I had my first beard when I was 14. And so I was like this tiny, angry Sasquatch that came in demanding my Dreamcast. And, well, they didn't resist me either out of politeness or fear. And they hooked me up with a Dreamcast, an extra controller, the coveted visual memory unit, and not just Sonic Adventure, but also Blue Stinger. Now, Sonic Adventure, I have to say, a lot of people have bashed this game for its controls and camera at the time of its release ever since, and that is true, and I was aware of this when I played it, but you have to understand, this game was revolutionary and mind-blowing as well. And at the time, these were some of the best graphics we'd ever seen, and it was just, the levels were huge, it was magnificent to watch. So Sonic Adventure was absolutely a cornerstone launch game, just like Halo, just like any of those. And, if you weren't there for it, I can understand how it seems like it, paled in comparison to Halo or Mario 64. But Sonic Adventure, at launch of the Dreamcast, when you put it side by side with the kind of platformers and things that were on the PlayStation and the Nintendo 64, it was amazing. And Blue Stinger, now this is a game that most people would consider to be mediocre, and I know, it's survival horror, and it's Christmas themed, which, that's pretty much guaranteed to get a better review from me. But Blue Stinger is a very odd little game, and I really, really enjoy it, and I'll probably do a whole special on Blue Stinger when we get closer to the Christmas season. But Blue Stinger is a game where you have a combination of weird melee weapons and weird projectile weapons, and you combine those to beat the crud out of these mutants that are on this island where it's an island off the coast of Mexico where they were experimenting on old dinosaur fossils and things, a very Jurassic Park kind of setup. And then a meteor struck the island somehow, and inside the meteor was a monster that turned everyone into monsters. And so it's kind of a Resident Evil Jurassic Park Christmas kind of thing, which, come on, how can that not be awesome? But I absolutely love this game. Now, let's just enjoy some Christmas ambiance here. Hey, quit messing with my Christmas ambiance, dick. The Dreamcast would ultimately be considered a failure next to Sony's PlayStation 2, and would be Sega's final home console release. But in the time when it was out, it released some games that are to this day in my top 10 favorite games. It's also a console that I pull out to play again more than most of my other classic systems. And although it would later revolutionize console gaming online with games like Phantasy Star Online, when it initially launched, it was just mind-blowing, things like the VMU and how it would show things like your health in Blue Stinger. And the technology combined with the graphics, combined with how much I personally enjoyed those first two games of Sonic Adventure and Blue Stinger, and to this day they're two of the games that I pull out when I do play my Dreamcast. For me, I don't know if I've ever enjoyed the experience of bringing home a console that first day and just feeling like I immediately had made a good choice. The games were going to be fantastic, and I was in for a generation of wonderful games that would be firsts and push the boundaries of my expectations. So that's what it was like buying a Dreamcast on $9,999. I'm sure I'll do a lot more Dreamcast videos, and I definitely want to do a Blue Stinger one this Christmas. Thank you for watching the first episode of What It Was Like. By the way, this was recorded on ReDream rather than on my original hardware, just for convenience, but ReDream is an excellent emulator. It's very accurate, extremely easy to set up. I would say that's its best feature. So if you want to capture Dreamcast footage and you're not a stickler for getting all of it off original hardware and you just want easy setup and for it to look and play well, I highly recommend ReDream. I bought the premium version. I think it's a fantastic emulator and especially great for YouTubers just wanting to capture footage in a hurry.